Oh,
Hello?
hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see if we can see you. Could you turn your camera on?
Uh,
All
nope.
right.
Yes.
All right, here we are. Guys, this is David. I like the shark shirt. Very
Yeah, I
cool,
told you
very
I had
cool.
even more ridiculous ones. At this point, they just come to me.
Shark
This
shirts
one was,
too?
yeah, this one was a gift.
I
I'm
love
now,
that.
of- I'm now officially an Instagram fashion influencer because a company sent me a shark shirt in exchange for wearing it and posting a picture of it on Instagram.
Sponsored.
So,
I got
yeah,
chat. Hashtag ad. Oh my goodness gracious. That's awesome.
yeah. High school me would find it pretty funny that I'm a fashion anything.
Very cool, very cool. So I gave a short introduction. Celeron was $75 already. Holy cow!
Wow,
Celeron said Shark Party. So we're at $90. Before we even
that's
talked
amazing.
about shark advocates. Um, let's see. Okay, so I told them that you are a conservation ecologist. Am I
Hmm.
saying that the right way? And
Sure.
that you're doing environmental consulting,
Yes.
and marine conservation biologist. So, if could you tell them what that means, or tell us what that
Sure.
means?
That means I use science in order to better inform policy, in order to better conserve, protect, and manage threatened species that live in the ocean. And I work primarily with sharks, which are some of the most threatened animals in the world, which is something that most people don't know.
Yeah,
24% of all known species of sharks and their relatives are listed as threatened with extinction by the IUCN Red List,
I
which
saw
is,
that today on the Shark Advocates website. I can't believe
yeah,
that.
yeah, we call it sometimes the worst environmental crisis that no one's ever heard of. And it's amazing the extent to which people that are very aware of and concerned by what's going on in the world don't know things like that.
Right?
And
Yeah.
it's because for so long sharks had just such an awful reputation of being bloodthirsty murderers that if you dip your toe in the bathtub, a shark's going to jump out and eat your whole family.
Right.
Uh, and that's not really the case. And also, it turns out sharks are very, very, very important for a healthy functioning ecosystem.
Hmm.
Predators are always important for this sort of thing, but in the ocean, that appears to be the case as well. And losing sharks can result in all sorts of negative ecological interactions. And when we're talking about an ecosystem like the ocean that contributes to food security for tens of millions of the poorest humans in the world, as well as employment for millions and millions of humans, that's a problem.
Right. Yeah, this is great because I said in the intro, and I mentioned to you that we talked to David Steen
Hmm.
last week on the podcast, and we had a similar conversation. It's kind of familiar about the image that snakes
Yeah.
get in the news media, and how easy it is for people to latch on to the big fuzzy um, charismatic animals, and not so much things like sharks, right? So
Yeah.
so that it's awesome that you're on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and
I'm
teaching us
happy to
about
be
this
here.
stuff. I'm super excited, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done over 200 media interviews.
Yep.
Is that correct? Over 200 media interviews, but you've never been on Twitch.
I have not been on Twitch before. I wrote an article about Twitch earlier this year for
Really?
American Scientist magazine. Damien Explores is a person I met at a science communication conference, and
What a
he
crazy
goes on
coincidence. He
hikes.
he just
Yeah.
donated $10.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Damien.
David, thank you so much. Damien
Yeah.
was on the podcast as
Oh,
well.
wonderful. So
Yeah.
your folks know him, but I was very impressed by the sort of stuff that he does, and got to write an article about it. And that was I play video games, but not. I'm working my way through some of the older games, so we don't use
Okay.
the Twitch and Discord and things like that as much
Yeah.
in what we're doing for that.
What games do you
But
play?
where my wife has recently learned that she loves video games, so
Uh
we're
huh.
working our way through the Game of the Year ones from editions from years past. But we're a PlayStation family.
Cool. Very cool. Welsh Nerd just donated $100,
What? That's
and
awesome. Thanks,
so
everybody.
it's yo.
So should I
Let's
talk a
learn
little
some
bit about
stuff
what
about
Shark
shark.
Advocates International is?
Please, great. That would be great.
Okay. So there are tons of environmental nonprofits. That's part of the reason I moved to DC, was in order to better use my expertise to help these organizations to more effectively use science in support of conservation. Shark Advocates International is a one-person operation run by an environmental hero of mine named Sonia Fordham. If you look back on any major ocean conservation policy related to sharks from the last couple decades, she's been involved or often leading. And as part of for Shark Advocates International, she travels all over the world and goes to wildlife management meetings and fisheries management meetings and advocates on behalf of using science to better protect sharks. So it is on the ground. It is in boardrooms and with governments and industry groups. She's very, very busy. I've in fact been in DC for 4 months now and have only run into her once
Wow.
because she's traveling so much. But Shark Advocates International does amazing work, and because it's a smaller organization, donations go a longer way.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys, you can do Command Sharks in chat if you want more information on that organization. I'll link you. Cool. That's awesome. That's so neat that you know Damien too. I didn't realize that there was that connection there.
Yeah, we met earlier this year at a science communication conference in
Nice.
Portland.
I got to get to one of those.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, Damien's stream's really cool. You guys know Damien. You can put a smile in chat if you know Damien, but I assume you all do. His streams have been doing very, very well lately. He's been doing a lot of really cool bird watching, and his underwater streams are so cool. I don't know anyone else doing what Damien's doing on Twitch.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model.
Yeah, it is. And this podcast is relatively new too. You're the 11th guest that we've had.
Cool.
And yeah, it's been a really good time. We've learned from everything from snakes to American Eagle Foundation tipped $10. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've done birds of prey, snakes, big cats. It's been all over the boards. So
that's neat.
Yeah,
I got to do another. I've done several podcasts, but not video ones. And I did the last podcast I did. I was the 7th person to be interviewed, so it was 007 on the info on the. So that was neat.
That's awesome.
This is the closest I'll ever come to being a fashion influencer or a spy.
Oh, you're famous now. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about what you do, like what your day-to-day is and how you got into sharks in the first place.
Sure. Well, I've been interested in sharks as long as my family can remember. There are pictures of me as a 2 and 3-year-old with shark toys and shark t-shirts and things like that.
Nice.
I feel like most kids go through a shark thing or a dinosaur thing.
Yeah.
And I actually did both of those. I had a pretty extensive dinosaur collection too, but I had to choose, and I chose getting to spend my days on boats over coral reefs rather than digging in the deserts of Montana for bones.
That's
I like
awesome.
that. At least for now, I can still see my animals alive in the world. Though paleontology is, of course, a really interesting and neat thing.
Yeah.
I studied. My parents have always been very supportive of this. They are not academics, but they've always been very supportive of me loving sharks and loving the ocean. Though I suspect they always thought I would grow out of this, and I never did. I studied biology with a concentration in marine science at Duke and spent a semester and a summer at the Marine Lab in the Outer Banks.
Oh, cool.
I went to College of Charleston for marine biology for my master's, and that's where I met my wife there and did my PhD in Miami. And then I just finished a 2-year postdoc in Vancouver at Simon Fraser University. And now for the last few months, I've been running my own scientific and environmental consulting shop in DC.
Wow.
So that's been a lot of driving.
Yeah.
We drove from Miami to Vancouver and then from Vancouver to DC.
Oh, Symphony's in here. Symphony, what's up, buddy? Nice to see you. That's really cool. What'd you do for your PhD?
I was originally going to be doing mostly shark feeding ecology, which is the study of basically what sharks eat, how they fit into the food web, how they influence the food web. Uh-huh. And that's important because understanding that sort of stuff is what allows us to understand what's going to happen to food webs when sharks aren't there anymore or when they decline. Uh-huh. And it ended up turning into about half that, and I got more into this policy side of things.
Yeah.
During my PhD. And I ended up studying recreational fishing policy, which is instead of the biggest threat facing sharks overall is commercial fishing, which is professional fishermen killing sharks on purpose to sell. But we learned that recreational fishing, which is people for fun
Yeah.
going fishing for fun, is a significant threat to some shark populations, especially in Florida. And my research was used in the recent change of policy in Florida for how anglers are allowed to interact with sharks.
Right.
So that got me interested in the human side of wildlife conservation, what we
Mhm.
call human dimensions of wildlife management.
Yeah.
And now a lot of my research focuses on talking to people about sharks,
Yeah.
which is different from studying sharks directly, but important for the management of sharks. And my research also looks at the policy side now. And as part of my day-to-day operation now, I meet with nonprofits and industry groups and policymakers and just work with them to figure out how science can better inform policy.
Yeah, that's awesome. That science comm piece is so important. I'm really learning that as we go through this podcast. We've got a bunch of donations that have come in here. Panda tipped
Awesome.
$10. American Eagle Foundation
Thanks,
with
everybody.
$10. Celtics with $10. Welsh Nerd with $36. Another donation from Welsh with $36. Welsh, thank you. Stretch tipped $50. Said fish are friends, not food. And Celeron tipped another $25. And said,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, it's crazy. Said shark fin harvesting is one of the most disgusting things I've seen in a long time. I guess that's a good segue.
Yeah,
So you're talking about commercial fishing is a problem, recreational fishing is a problem, shark fin harvesting. What's that about?
sure. So this is a complicated issue because as your viewer, listener, viewer,
Viewer.
is video on your end, viewer. I know technology things. As your viewer said, shark fin harvesting can be an extremely troubling practice.
Mhm.
So that it's also a very widely misunderstood one. The purpose of the so what shark finning is when a commercial fishermen catch a shark, they cut the shark's fins off
Mhm.
and discard the rest of the shark overboard. And
Mhm.
that's done because the fins are used in a traditional Southeast Asian delicacy called shark fin soup.
Right.
And therefore, they're more valuable than the rest of the animal. Shark meat tends to not sell for as much, at the very least per pound, as fins do, but it
Mhm.
varies by species pretty widely. The animal is often still alive when that happens.
Oh my gosh.
So they can't swim without their fins, and they're
Right.
bleeding from the wound. So they will bleed to death or drown over the course of about an hour. And that's that's a pretty brutal and inhumane as well as unsustainable practice. It also doesn't happen as much anymore.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of misconceptions about that. When I lived in Florida, I saw a ton of these online petitions, often started by concerned citizens who did not have any sort of professional training or education or experience in the conservation space,
Mhm.
calling on the government to ban shark finning in Florida.
Yeah.
We did in 1994.
Wow.
So those petitions can't possibly accomplish anything because they achieved success 25 years before they were written.
Right.
So now sharks in the U.S. and in much of the rest of the developed world, uh, we don't do shark finning anymore.
Mhm.
Sharks are still killed, but now you can't in the U.S. you can't remove the fins at sea and discard the body at sea and only bring the fins to shore. Uh, a lot of the reason for that is because it's inhumane, and that led to animal welfare concerns,
Mhm.
which have always been a powerful political force in the West.
Mhm.
But also, it's because it's unsustainable.
Right.
It's wasteful. You're not using most of the. You're using about 3% of the weight of the animal. But now we don't do that. It's still legal to kill most species of sharks,
Yeah.
but the meat is also sold. If any of your viewers are in the U.S., I ask you to next time you're at your local grocery store, go to the seafood counter and see if there's shark there.
Mhm.
And if there is, take a picture and tweet it at me at Why Sharks Matter. I bet most of you will find it is there. Particularly if you live in Florida. When I lived in Miami, Publix would often have 3 or 4 different kinds of shark meat. And that's not a specialty market. That's the regular grocery store that everyone
I've
goes to.
I've never noticed that.
Mako is not uncommonly sold, though it's getting less common now. Last year, the Atlantic population was declared endangered. Um, Black tip is very commonly sold on the east coast of the U.S., though their populations are healthy. That's not a conservation concern, at least as far as scientists are concerned. Thresher shark often sold. Um, and if you go to specialty seafood markets, you can find all sorts of crazy stuff. But I want to stress here that that's not inherently bad.
Mm-hmm.
This is something of a philosophical divide in the ocean conservation world. That the unsustainable overfishing is the biggest threat facing sharks. So what do you do about that? The two choices are lead to more sustainable fishing, which
Right.
is the sort of stuff that I do,
Uh-huh.
or stop all fishing entirely.
Right.
And that's been a growing movement, largely driven by animal welfare rather than science or conservation concerns. There are people who believe that sharks are amazing animals, and I don't want to see any shark hurt for any reason, even if it doesn't harm the population scientifically, and even if it's used to support poor fishermen in a rural community in the developing world. That's not a viewpoint that I share, and that often leads to conflict between environmental groups. So unsustainable overfishing is bad, which doesn't mean that there's no such thing as sustainable fishing, and doesn't mean that sustainable fishing can't work.
Okay. Um,
So that was a long answer, but it's something that I deal with a lot. And the biggest misconception about sharks 20 years ago was that everyone thought that sharks were going to kill your whole family if you dipped your toe in the bathtub.
yeah, that's a really big
And
deal. Is public perception, I
yes,
suppose.
and now the pendulum has swung so far in the other direction that now there's a widespread belief that sharks are actually cute, innocent, adorable puppy dogs that just need hugs,
Mm-hmm.
and we shouldn't hurt them at all for any reason. And there's no such thing as a sustainable fishery anyway, so we should ban all fishing. That's not true either, and that's also harmful, but in a different way.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Sniper tipped $25. Thank you, Sniper.
Thanks.
Danielle tipped $20 and said sharks are my favorite, so I'm happy to see them as a topic of conservation cast. And Ven tipped $10 and said sharks are just misunderstood. Thank you guys so much. We're at $417
Oh my
already.
goodness.
Yeah, it was very, very quick. That added up quick. Thank you guys so much for donating. Again, uh, I'm for those of you who didn't hear at the beginning, the donations today are going to Shark Advocates International, which is David's favorite shark nonprofit, I suppose.
Mhm.
And they do advocating for sharks with policy and with the fishing stuff that we're talking about now.
Yes.
So thank you so much for the donations, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Um, I I had a question and I completely just blanked on it. Shoot. We were talking about overfishing.
Yes.
So you are now an environmental consultant. How did you fall more onto the policy side? I know you kind of mentioned it, but why is that
Yeah.
important for marine conservation?
Well, because environmental problems are complicated,
Mm-hmm.
and I have said that often that I am skeptical of any solution to a complex global problem that fits on a bumper sticker. It requires nuance, it requires detail, it requires technical knowledge. A lot of these issues, which means scientific training is important. And there are a lot of passionate people who are very experienced at the legal side and the advocacy side and the policymaking side who don't have scientific training. And there's also a lot of scientists who have this technical scientific training that don't have any idea how the proverbial sausage gets made and how science gets turned into law. So I am sort of what we call in the human dimension space a boundary organization.
Okay.
So I can speak science and I can speak policy. So I can help groups work together because often those groups are so distinct in their training and in their background and in what their day-to-day life is like that we can't even talk to each other, even though we're ostensibly on the same side.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that's been really important to me to do more and more, though I do consider myself primarily a scientist.
Okay.
But I do policy stuff, and I do public science engagement, science communication, science education. But I'm still, writing grants, publishing papers, peer reviewing papers.
Yeah. So you're really, really good at the public outreach stuff, guys. I don't know if you saw his Twitter, but it's pretty neat. Um, why do you think that's important? The shifting the perception of sharks in particular, because you talked about that Jaws scene, right? Of the
Yeah.
way people think about him. So why do you think this part is important? Just the public outreach piece.
Well, I am fortunate in terms of this public science engagement stuff that I do, that in conservation biology and environmental science, there's long been a recognition that scientists just can't stay in the ivory tower and publish papers in dusty journals that no one ever reads, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
There are some scientific disciplines where people want to do public science outreach, like I do,
Mhm.
and they're told by their advisors that they can't do that.
Mhm.
That's unscientific to go speak to a school about what a day in your life is like, or it's unscientific to. I speak at events like Nerd Night or things like that,
Mhm.
and there are disciplines where it would be considered weird to do that.
Mhm.
So I'm lucky that I didn't have to forge new ground in the idea of public science engagement matters. But I was one of the first people to be doing this online as much as I do for sharks.
Yeah.
So I just passed 10 years on Twitter, which means I'm old. I've been
Whoa.
on. Yeah, it means I've been on there long enough that I remember when Twitter used to be fun. Uh,
I
but
didn't even know it's been around for 10 years.
it's been around for about 11 and a half.
Wow.
I just passed 10 years as a science blogger. I'm a senior editor for Southern Fried Science, one of the most widely read science blogs in the world.
Yes, I was looking at that today. It's awesome.
So it's basically when if our goal is to change how citizens interact with the ocean, just publishing a paper is not enough. If our
Mhm.
goal is to change laws that govern how people interact with the ocean, just publishing a paper is not enough. You need to get out there and talk to people. And
Mhm.
I find that also I really like doing that, which helps. uh, I, I even during my PhD, during our field research, there was a significant outreach component. My advisor did a great job of integrating that from the start.
Mhm.
Every research expedition we went on, we had a community group with us. Sometimes that would be an eighth grade science class from Miami-Dade Public Schools. Sometimes once we had a yoga club. There were
Interesting.
always guests that came out with us. He takes thousands of people a year out in the Miami area shark tagging, and they help with the
Whoa.
science, which is great because pulling up those lines is really heavy. So having extra labor is helpful. But also, what that means for me is, even if for me it's the 200th nurse shark I've seen that year,
Right.
I never think, oh man, another nurse shark, because for someone on that boat, it's the first time they've ever seen a
Yeah, like
shark.
the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and you can feed off that energy.
That's
So
awesome.
not only is it important if the goal is actual policy change and behavior change, but I find it energizing. I find it rewarding. I find it fun. Um, so yeah, I'm very into the public science engagement stuff. And if anyone is interested, I am on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at Why Sharks Matter, all one word. Always happy to answer questions that people have about sharks, and I share ways for people to get involved, as well as cool new science related to sharks and marine biology in the ocean.
Yeah, Mods, if you could link his socials, that would be wonderful. Um,
And if you want to see more ridiculous shirts like this, follow hashtag ElasmoSwag on Instagram.
oh, there you go.
That the shark skate array is an elasmobranch, which means plate gill. It's just the taxonomic term for them. So elasmoswag is shark fashion that either on me or that I see out in the world.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, so backing up a little bit, you said 24% of shark
Hmm.
species are is it threatened or near threatened?
Threatened.
Threatened.
Uh, yes. So the IUCN Red List stuff is pretty widely misunderstood. So I'll take a minute to explain what that is.
Okay.
The IUCN Red List is an international group of scientific experts that follow agreed upon scientific standards for just evaluating how good shape a particular species is in.
Uh-huh.
They're designed so that the different categories are designed so that there's a very technical, specific, detailed definition that if any 10 people evaluated the same species, they would come to the same conclusion. It's
Okay.
systematic, it's scientific, it's testable, it's replicable.
Mhm.
A lot of people think it's sort of hand wavy kumbaya stuff, and it's very mathy.
Okay.
Uh, the so there are different categories. The best one is least concern.
Mhm.
That means that the population's doing fine. We're not worried about it,
Mhm.
which doesn't mean that there won't ever be a problem in the future,
Right.
but means that for now we can focus our resources on species that are in worse shape. The next is near threatened, which means not threatened but doing worse than the least concerned species. And then there are the three categories that are together grouped as threatened, and that's vulnerable in increasing order of how bad it is. It's vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. A
Okay.
critically endangered species is one that is circling the drain.
Right.
And a vulnerable species is not doing great, but not quite yet circling the drain. So 24% of all known species of sharks and their relatives. And I should note, there's a new species of shark or shark relative discovered on average about every 2 weeks. which
Really?
is amazing,
Wait,
right?
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, no, like for some reason, some of them you'd get a ton of attention and some of them don't. Uh, but it's always fascinating to me that these year-end like coolest species discovered this year, like one random shark will be on there and the other like 20 aren't.
That's so cool.
But
Well,
yeah,
I mean that's
uh,
unfortunate, but the fact is
yeah,
so
there's
cool.
lots still to discover, which does not mean that mermaids or megalodon are hiding in the depths there.
Right.
But there's definitely lots still to discover. But yeah,
Yeah.
24% of sharks and their relatives are either assessed as threatened with extinction and either that
Uh-huh.
vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered,
Uh-huh.
or estimated to be. There's also
Okay.
a category called data deficient,
Okay.
and that means as scientists we cannot make a call on how good shape this species is in because there's just not enough scientific data on their populations. The red list is actually very conservative in this way, but this 24% statistic includes those that from the data deficient are estimated to probably be um, threatened.
Okay. Got it.
So the red list stuff, if anyone actually is, if there, I know there's someone out there because your audience includes science geeks. So there's someone out there who wants to learn more about how the red list works. You can actually get trained as a red list assessor for free online
Oh,
through conservationtraining.org,
I didn't know
which does
that.
not. Yeah, that does not mean that you will be hired as a scientist who does this stuff. But if you just want to, it's because there's a lot of competition in this world. But if you just are someone who wants to learn more about it, you can just take the class for free.
Cool. I just linked that in
Uh,
chat, guys.
yeah,
That's awesome. I did not know that. That's why
yeah,
I love
and
this podcast so much. I get to learn so much. So that's awesome.
yeah, the conservationtraining.org website has a lot of free training for technical skills related to this stuff, which is awesome.
Wow.
And it also appeals to my love of certificates because anytime you do one of these online training things and do the quiz, you get a certificate. So I was hanging them on my fridge for a while, and my wife is a saint for putting up with this stuff.
That's so cool. I love certificates too. That's funny. The donations today, you guys, are absolutely insane. Um, Brad tipped $18, Mevin with $50, Welsh with 40, Rushan with 30, um, Dionysus with $3, Zoya with $18, Anonymous with $25, Dan with $20, and we're at
Wow,
$648.
that's wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
You
Sonia will be
guys,
thrilled. I meant to tell her in advance that I was doing this and totally forgot. So
it'll
this
be
will
a
be a
nice
total surprise
surprise.
for her. Yeah,
Good, good. Dionysus in his donation message said, I heard that sharks don't sleep. How is that possible? And do other
yeah,
animals do that?
yeah. So sharks rest, which is distinct from sleeping. They
Okay.
have highly active periods. This also there's over 500 species of sharks.
Uh huh.
The new Sharks of the World that's coming out soon claims to be, I think it was 545 species. I I'm sure I'm gonna get dinged on that by some well actually person, but it's something like that.
Okay.
There are 513 in the most recent edition that I have. There's a new edition coming out that has more that I haven't seen yet. But there's
Mm-hmm.
over 500 species of sharks, and they're very, very, very different in their biology and their behavior in their habitat. So the largest is the whale shark, the size of a school bus. The
Oh my
smallest
god.
is the dwarf lantern shark, the size of about your forearm. Some live in coral reefs, some live in under Arctic ice, some live in rivers. Bull sharks are absolutely not the only species of shark that can enter fresh water. Some glow in the dark. There's a species that's bubblegum pink in coloration. So it's a very diverse group of animals. But yeah, they don't like sleep in the way we do.
Okay. Interesting.
There are some that can. Many species, in fact, have to keep swimming their whole lives because that's how they breathe. That's how they force water over their
I've
gills.
heard that, but I wasn't sure if that was a myth or not.
Yeah, it's not true of every species. There are some species that can rest on the bottom and pump water over their own gills. Nurse sharks, if you're in the southeastern US and have ever been snorkeling, you may have seen a nurse shark. They're one of the more common large species that we get in the southeastern US. They can do that, and in fact they can sit for, I don't know that it wasn't leaving and coming back, but I was doing checkout dives in Florida at scuba camp where I work, and we saw the same nurse shark under the same rock for a week. So
Whoa.
there are some species that can sit on the bottom and pump water over their own gills. Many do need to keep swimming constantly, so they breathe. There are others that sometimes will perch and rest, maybe at the mouth of an underwater cave, so water flows over their gills due to high currents. But yeah, they don't sleep.
Interesting. Um, we got Super Genius with $33, Uber with
Thanks.
$3, Jeff with $10, and Bevan with $20. You
That's
guys
awesome.
are nuts. Said
That's gonna do a lot of good.
whale shark best shark is what Uber said.
Uh, so that's a long-standing Twitter and Instagram thing of mine that
Is
I
it?
use. My corporate logo here is a sandbar shark, which
Oh.
I call #BestShark, and that has led to a lot of people chiming in with their own idea of what the best shark is. But I created the contest, and I'm the only judge, so I win.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
but sandbar sharks, I'll give a plug for them and follow #BestShark on Twitter and Instagram to learn about them. They are the species I studied for my master's. That's what's in this painting above me here.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so they're not the first shark I ever saw, but they're the first shark I ever saw a lot of, because I studied their populations for my master's. They
Okay.
are in aquariums all over the world. So
Mhm.
a lot of people, the first shark they've ever seen is a sandbar shark,
Uh-huh.
even though they might not know that. This is different from a sand tiger shark. Those are the ones that have the big crazy teeth that they can't quite close their mouths. But they're just
Oh,
the
I
the
see.
small brownish, yellow, grayish, sharky shaped shark in the shark tank is probably a sandbar shark. There's a big population near where I am now in the Chesapeake, which is right next to a major research facility, the Virginia Institute of Marine Science at William and Mary. And so that they have been widely studied for decades. So it's a species of shark that doesn't get a lot of love,
Uh-huh.
uh, but has been really important in both public understanding of sharks and scientific understanding of sharks. So they are #BestShark, and they're my
Okay.
corporate logo.
Cool. That's so cool. We got a couple good questions in chat here.
Wonderful.
One of them was, oh, I lost it. How do sharks navigate while swimming when seasonally migrating?
Yeah, shark migrations are bananas. There are species that regularly swim thousands of miles in a year, and
In a
if
year.
in a year,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
There are some species that do not do that. Like there are some species that are definitely homebodies. I have a column, or I have a couple columns that I write for. But in Sport Diver magazine, I have an Ask a Marine Biologist column. So if I don't get to your questions here, if you email me a question, I might answer it in Sport Diver magazine to Ask a Marine Biologist. But the most recent one I did was, you always hear about all these fish that are amazing super athletes. What about the species that aren't?
Mm-hmm.
And there are definitely couch potatoes of the sea. The Greenland shark is the slowest swimming large animal that's ever been recorded. They move about a they move about a foot a second.
What?
It's slightly less than that at their normal cruising speed. So try to act that out. That doesn't sound so slow, uh, but it's hard to walk that slowly.
Yeah.
Uh, so there are also sharks that are not amazing super athletes. Greenland sharks are cool in their own way. They're the longest lived vertebrate animal. They might live to be over 400 years old.
Is this the one you?
Uh,
I thought it was your tweet. You said there was a shark that could live
yeah,
400 years and eat
yeah.
polar
They
bears.
eat polar bears and they eat reindeer.
What?
Uh, isn't that awesome?
That's
You hear
insane.
about, like, everyone's seen those great whites reaching out of the water or going after seals, and that's super cool. Sure, these guys eat polar bears are the largest land predator on Earth, and Greenland sharks eat them.
How?
Uh, so there, we don't. It's never been observed the actual hunting, but scientists that study Greenland shark diets have found polar bear skulls in the stomachs.
Oh
So
my.
that it may be scavenging, but in my professional opinion, a polar bear swimming from ice floe to ice floe is quite vulnerable to being slurped up from below.
Wow.
Uh, but
How
yeah,
much do these? I mean, how long are these sharks? Do you know? Says there.
15, 20 feet range, well into the size range that my mom calls big enough.
Yeah, I'd
Uh,
say.
yeah, they're a good size animal. Um, but yeah, some are amazing super athletes. Mako sharks are the fastest swimming fish in the ocean. They can swim for short bursts. I think it's like 55 miles an hour. Um,
That's
but some
really fast. Oh
really
my
fast. Yeah.
gosh.
But the question was about migration and navigation.
Yes.
The short answer is we don't know. If you're out in the open ocean, there aren't landmarks, there aren't street signs. You can't see the bottom. the ocean all looks the same. So what we think is happening is that, like other species of animals that engage in these migrations, that they're following the Earth's magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
Sharks are able to detect electromagnetic fields. You often hear about that in the context of hunting. Hammerheads, the reason why they have that goofy head shape is it's extra surface area for their electrosensory system. So they sweep over the bottom looking for stingrays and things buried under the sand.
Uh-huh.
They can detect their electric fields even if they can't see or hear or smell them. But we think they can also use that same electrosensory system for navigation. But I don't think we know that for sure.
That's crazy
Uh,
to think about.
but that's a leading theory.
Oh my gosh. That was a
But
great
they, I mean,
question.
yeah, great question. And it's so cool. These animals go back to the same spot in the middle of damn nowhere
Yeah.
year after year. Many of them have very predictable migrations. They'll end up at the same beach or the same spot in the middle of the Atlantic. My PhD lab put GPS telemetry tags on a bunch of tiger sharks and found that there's a population that just goes every year out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean where there is nothing.
What?
There's not.
That's
So
so
what are they doing there?
strange.
We don't know.
Oh my gosh.
But they come back to the same spot in the Bahamas every year too.
Wow. That was a really good question. Thank you for that. I don't remember the
Yeah,
username for that, but nice question. Another question that came up that was good is is I guess it's not necessarily ecological tourism, but swimming with sharks.
yeah,
Is that generally good for sharks, bad for sharks? Can you not really give a yes or no to that?
yeah.
Does it depend?
So it's complicated.
Okay.
So we call that. This is I. There are two things that I get to be uh, elitist, snarky scientist about and get on my definition making hat. One
Okay.
is shark finning that we talked about earlier. The other is ecotourism.
Right.
You didn't use that word. Thank you. Uh, this is wildlife tourism. Swimming with sharks is wildlife tourism, not ecotourism.
Okay.
Wildlife tourism is similar,
Mhm.
but ecotourism implies there is no measurable harm uh, to the animals. Would not necessarily that the benefits outweigh the harm, but that there's no harm, and
Right.
that's generally not true.
Okay.
It's not. It can be done responsibly. There are lots of science and conservation minded scuba outlets. I had another Ask a Marine Biologist column about this a little while ago. That was how do you identify green friendly scuba operators. There are some that donate free dives for marine biologists. There are some that collect data for marine biologists. There are some that donate a portion of their profits to conservation. There are some that do all kinds of great stuff for science and the environment. And then there are also a lot of shark tour operators that are macho cowboy idiots that are going to get people killed, and in some cases have gotten people killed.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we've gone. I mentioned earlier we've swung too far in this other direction of from sharks are bloodthirsty monsters that are going to kill us all to sharks are innocent, cute, cuddly teddy bear puppies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an intermediate there, which is that they're wild animals that eat mammals sometimes, and we're mammals, and they're big and they're predators. They're not hunting us. They're not hunting us down. They're not seeking us out, but they're dangerous if you don't respect them. And yeah, there are people that ride sharks. There are people that grab and hug sharks. Nurse sharks that I mentioned earlier are frequently involved in shark bites, and people are shocked to learn that because they heard that nurse sharks don't bother people. Well, they don't unless you bother them,
Mhm.
and everyone's heard that they don't bother you, so everyone bothers them.
Right.
And I was present in Florida when someone was reporting to a police officer that they had been bitten by a nurse shark, and they were bleeding from the arm, and they said, "I want to report a shark bite." And the officer was like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, do you need?" Like, "Yeah, it's not that bad. I just want to report it." And this shark bit me for no reason. And the police officer said, "Can you tell me a little more?" And they said, "Yeah, I'm down here on vacation, and I wanted to see a shark, and I saw a shark buried under the rocks, and I knew it was a nurse shark, and I knew they don't bother people, so I yanked on his tail so I could get a picture, and then he bit me for no reason."
What on
That
earth?
happens all the time.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
there are definitely scuba operators that do a great job of safely interacting with the sharks, safe for the sharks and for the humans. But there are a lot of macho cowboy idiots out there that are doing things that have gotten humans killed and are noticeably disruptive to the sharks' behavior. And there are people that idolize people that do this, and they say they're somehow heroes of conservation by showing that sharks aren't dangerous. You don't
Mhm.
need to bother an animal and inspire copycats that get killed to show that sharks aren't dangerous.
Right. Okay. So speaking of unfortunate shark interactions with people, another question in chat is if you could address the idea that sharks can smell blood in the water and that makes them
Mm,
aggressive.
yeah. So sharks have an incredibly powerful sense of smell,
Mm-hmm.
and but and they are attracted to blood. Most predators are, but that it doesn't. It's not that there are some cartoons even that I've seen where a drop of blood in the water touches the shark and the shark's eyes glaze over and they go crazy. That
Right.
doesn't happen.
Okay.
Um, if you are actively bleeding, you should probably not go in the ocean, but because of viruses in the ocean, not because of sharks.
Right.
Um, a question that I get a lot is if I am a woman on my period, should I avoid going in the ocean because of sharks being attracted to blood?
Uh-huh.
No, that's not something you need to worry about.
Okay. Good to know. Good information.
There
Um,
are all kinds of reasons to not go in the ocean if you're bleeding for all kinds of reasons,
yeah.
but most of them are related to viral or bacterial infection and not sharks.
Right.
That's not like there's also something I don't know where this statistic started. It was probably Shark Week. Most of this nonsense is that a shark can smell a drop of blood a mile away. No,
Yes,
that's not how
that was another
that's not
thing
how
in
smell works.
that was another
Uh,
thing question in chat was they probably saw
yeah,
that.
yeah, that
Yes.
statistic gets quoted all the time. They can detect incredibly low concentrations of blood in the water, which is awesome. But they can't smell a drop of blood a mile away. When you smell anything, tiny particles of that thing are interacting with chemosensors in your nostril. So
Yes.
remember, think of that next time you smell something really gross. But yeah, you can't
Good
detect
image.
a drop of blood a mile away, but they can smell really, really, really low concentrations of not only blood, but fear and stress hormones, which is neat.
So
There's been some evidence that they react differently to mammal blood versus fish blood. That varies by species. Certainly our blood is chemically distinct uh, from that of most sharks' preferred prey. But there are species like tiger sharks that eat anything, and great
mhm.
whites that eat mammals like seals.
Okay. Another question that came up in chat here is it true if a shark's coming to you, you should gently bop the front of his nose to disorient him? That is true?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is not quite. So
Okay.
that gently bopping is fine. If you've ever this advice is commonly phrased as if a shark is biting you, punch it in the nose.
Right.
Uh, if you've ever tried punching underwater, it's excellent exercise for senior citizens, but it's not useful for much else.
Interesting
It's
point.
more
I'd
like
never really thought about that.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, so if the other thing is, if a shark bites you, it's going to immediately realize that you're not food and let go. Most people report that they never even see the shark that bit them because it
Yes.
immediately went, "Oh my God, what's that? That's not food," and leaves.
Okay.
It's very a shark bite in general is vanishingly unlikely. There are a ton of statistics about this. More people are killed by flower pots falling on their head from above
Then
that
sharks.
are in a year than are killed by sharks. That freaks me out now. Walking under apartment buildings.
That's
More
tragic.
people
Oh
are
my
killed by
gosh.
vending machines
Yeah, I did
than are
see
killed
someone
by
said that
sharks.
earlier.
Yeah. More people are killed falling off cliffs while taking selfies than are killed by sharks.
Oh my gosh.
My favorite one of these, because it's one I calculated. Do you remember the TV show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland?
No.
It was a counter. He was a counterterrorism spy, police officer, whatever,
Okay.
and like a super soldier that fought terrorists.
Uh-huh.
And in the course of the show, not even on screen, you see his character Jack Bauer kill more humans than sharks have killed in the whole world ever.
That's a great statistic.
So this is a extremely unlikely thing, but it's even more unlikely that you would have time to need to do anything if a
Right.
shark bit you.
Yeah.
So I was actually a question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire last year, and it was about this, and it was
Uh-huh.
an interview that I did, and the choices were if you're attacked by a shark, you should attack the shark's what, and the answers were I think life choices, singing ability, confidence, or eyes, and yeah, go for the eyes if you need to do anything,
Okay. Interesting.
but you won't.
Right.
I'm hesitant to even give that advice. I mean, I was terrified as a kid that like falling in quicksand was going to be a thing that happened to me a lot because we got so much safety advice about what to do if you fall in quicksand.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's right,
I
me
travel a
too.
lot. I haven't seen quicksand.
Me
Um,
neither.
the there are places where that's an issue, obviously, but yeah, I'm hesitant to even give out advice for what to do. But yeah, next time you're swimming, try punching underwater and see if you think you can punch hard enough
Yeah.
to deter a large
I
angry predator.
I had never thought about that. That's a good point. Another person asked about or has been asking about tonic immobility.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tonic immobility is basically if a shark is flipped over, it passes out. And this is physiologically similar to something that happens with humans that are subject to a traumatic event. You often hear people who are in car accidents or are injured in some other way say, I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, but I was aware of everything that was happening around me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same physiological mechanism. Tonic immobility is sometimes used by veterinarians at aquariums to get a shark to hold still for a medical procedure. It's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes used by scientists to safely work up an animal quickly. It should not be used by scuba divers because they think it's funny to see a shark pass out because
Right.
it does cause harm.
And that's something that
That
happens.
these macho cowboy idiots do. Yeah,
Wow. So so other threats from people to sharks. We have commercial fishing, recreational fishing. Is there an issue with like trade, like shark teeth, like stuff like that? Is
yeah.
that
So most shark teeth are fossil teeth.
okay?
So if it's dark, if the tooth is dark, that shark died before there were humans anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If it's white, then it was a relatively recent, not fossilized one. But even so, no one's killing sharks to get their teeth.
Okay.
There are some cases where particularly large sharks like great whites are killed a few a year to illegally take the jaws, as the whole jaw is an
Right.
impressive trophy. But if those shark tooth necklaces that you can get for $5 at surf stores, that no shark died for that.
Right.
Sharks also constantly regrow teeth their whole lives,
Mm-hmm.
and many can go through tens of thousands a single shark. So if every human in the world were to get multiple shark tooth necklaces, that would not still not pose a major conservation threat to sharks.
Okay. Good to know. Interesting. Um, we are at. Oh, I thought that was a new donation. Hank tipped $10 11 minutes ago, and we're at $761. Guys,
Wow,
thank you so much. So
that's
it's
awesome.
so cool. So you said the major problem is commercial and recreational fishing, overfishing.
The biggest problem by far is commercial fishing.
Okay, and
There's nothing else that's in that category.
commercial fishing,
Yeah,
and what?
recreational fishing was just something I focused on because other people weren't really working on it at the
Mhm,
time, other than a handful. Climate change is a threat to some species, but generally not many. Most sharks can just sort of move.
mhm. So
There are a few species where habitat destruction is a major problem. These are species that live in freshwater rivers where there's a lot of human development.
yeah,
But commercial overfishing is the greatest threat by far, which doesn't mean that we need to ban all fishing because no fishing can ever be sustainable.
yeah. So what would it mean for those marine ecosystems if shark populations were to continue dwindling?
Yeah. So where I'm from, just outside Pittsburgh, we used to have wolves,
Mm-hmm.
and we killed all the wolves because wolves are scary.
Right.
And now there's too many deer, and the deer are unhealthy because there's not enough food for all of them, and they're doing dangerous things like foraging right next to the road, which they wouldn't ordinarily do because there's not enough food,
Yeah.
and that results in a ton of car damage and property damage.
Yeah.
And they come into people's backyards and spread Lyme disease. Predators keep the food web in balance, and the
Mm-hmm.
same type of thing can happen in the ocean. When you
Okay.
lose predators, you get what's called predation release.
Mm-hmm.
Predation release is when it's just the predation pressure isn't there anymore, and prey populations can grow out of control,
Yeah.
and then food webs are complicated. So one thing growing out of control affects everything else.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Interesting. Anonymous with $20. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Eon Soul says, I want to know his thoughts about whale sharks and their population decline.
Yeah, so whale sharks are super cool animals. I've never seen one in the wild. I saw them at the Georgia Aquarium, and it was like amazing. I fell to my knees at the aquarium window
Oh.
when I saw one. Um, they are IUCN Red List endangered, so they're a species that's in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
and they are not a species that's caught by hook and line bycatch because they feed on plankton, so they wouldn't go for a piece of bait. But they're often caught in nets, particularly those looking for tuna.
Oh
Uh,
my
and
gosh.
yeah.
It's a big
Uh,
net.
oh, the nets that commercial fishing operations use are massive. Some
I
of them are
hadn't.
miles across. Uh,
Really?
yeah, this
Miles.
is industrial fishing operation is horrific in scale.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they can. I mean, a big threat facing sharks, a subset of this commercial overfishing, is what's called bycatch, which is accidentally catching a fish that's near the fish you were trying to catch.
Mm-hmm.
And people who go fishing for fun, they use a rod and reel. They catch one fish at a time. If it's not what they want, they throw it back.
Yeah.
When we're using these miles long nets, you can't do that. You catch everything.
So
Uh,
is there a legal penalty to if you catch
Sometimes.
something that that you're not meant
Depends on
to?
where you are. The
Mm-hmm.
U.S. is relatively well managed for this stuff, but a lot of fishing, so a weird thing about the seafood industry is the U.S. has some of the best managed seafood in the world, but most of the seafood that's caught in the U.S. is sold in other countries, and most of the seafood Americans eat is caught in other places.
Uh-huh.
Because even though we catch a ton of seafood, our fisheries are well managed, which means the fish is more expensive, and Americans don't want that.
Okay.
So if you want to if you want to support sustainable seafood, and I am someone that encourages you to not eat unsustainable seafood, but I'm not saying don't eat seafood at all.
Mm-hmm.
There are things you can look for if you don't have a PhD in fisheries management, as many of us don't, and you don't want to read hundreds of pages of stock assessments before you decide what you eat for dinner.
Yes.
There are these consumer sustainable seafood guides that are designed to make the process easier.
Okay.
One is the most widely used one is called Seafood Watch. And you can download an app, or you can get a little card for your wallet, and it divides everything into green. Yes, this you can eat this guilt-free. Yellow, maybe don't eat this that often, and red, maybe order the chicken instead.
All right.
And there's also the Marine Stewardship Council. That's a certifier rather than a guide, and they're the ones that have the little blue check mark with the fish on it. McDonald's filet of fish are sustainable, interestingly.
Interesting.
Walmart, for all their horrific abuses in a lot of ways, are actually really strong on sustainable seafood issues. But yeah, if you're ever at like an all-you-can-eat buffet and there's just tons of fried shrimp, like that's probably not caught
Probably not the
sustainably.
best.
It may even be there's with shrimp in particular. There's a lot of issues with the use of slave labor for fishing. So that's
Really?
scary. Yeah.
Currently?
Uh, oh yeah. Not here, but the U.S. buys it. Thailand in Southeast Asia has major issues with that, and that's a big supplier of shrimp to the U.S.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, massive human rights issues surrounding fishing.
Okay.
If for your American viewers, just buying American caught seafood is what will put you well on your way to making sure that you're not supporting these bad practices. But the Seafood Watch Guide and the Marine Stewardship Council checkmark are good things to look for. And
Okay.
sometimes they don't agree, which gets confusing. Uh, yeah.
All right. Well, I just linked Seafood Watch in chat, so if you missed that, the link is right there. Galilave to $12.75, Tawny
Thanks.
Sky even with $10, Dionysus with $1.03, and Seabass was
Wow.
$77.77, and Anonymous with $5. So we're at
Thanks, everybody.
$893.
That's amazing.
Absolutely incredible. And Danny tipped $6 and asked if the myth is true that the size of sharks correlates to its lifespan. So smaller
Ooh.
sharks don't live as long as bigger sharks. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
it's not good. There's always going to be weird exceptions to things, but
Mm-hmm.
generally that's true. Whale sharks can live to be over 100, and they're the biggest animals out there. Greenland sharks are the ones that can live to be 400,
400.
and
That blows my
yeah,
mind.
and they're pretty big. But the smaller ones that are like 3, 4, 5, 6 feet are probably 20, 30-year lifespan. So generally that's true.
Okay.
Very few sharks these days live their whole lives and die of natural causes, unfortunately.
Yeah. I bet that's another thing I was reading on Shark Advocates is one of the things that's tough is or why fishing is tough is because sharks take such a long time to mature.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, sharks have a very different life history than other fish. Something like a tuna reproduces by spawning.
mhm.
So they release giant clouds of eggs and sperm into the water. I've been swimming through that. I had to throw out my wetsuit, but it's fascinating.
Yuck.
Sharks reproduce, they have internal fertilization, which means you would recognize what you're looking at when you see sharks mating. Um,
Okay.
the and it's I have a blog post on Southern Fried Science, 50 Shades of Gray Reef Shark. If you want to check that out, there are I will warn you, it is horrifyingly violent shark mating.
Oh.
Uh, Female sharks have very thick skin for this reason, because sharks live in a three-dimensional world. So in order to make sure that you're close enough to the female shark, the male shark will bite on. Uh, yeah,
Oh.
this gets yes, it's interesting.
Here's that. I just linked this article in chat if you guys are interested in what he's talking about. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's there are things you won't be able to unsee. But yeah, um, the life history is an important part of their conservation issue. It means that they can't reproduce as quickly and they can't recover as quickly from fishing pressure. There are some fish species that we can kill most of the adults in a year, and that'll be fine for the population. Sharks, you can't do that because it takes them 10, 15, 20 years to reach reproductive maturity. Those Greenland sharks can take over 150 years.
150
Yeah, they're,
years?
they're they're not adults till they're in their 150s.
Wait,
Uh,
before they can reproduce?
yep, that's a long time to be in puberty.
Oh
Uh,
my
no,
gosh.
I learned this paper came out when I was in Canada, and I was able to give this during my public education talks, that a Greenland shark that was born when Canada became a country on Confederation Day is not an adult yet.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Guys, these are the sharks that move at a foot per second but also eat polar bears and also live 400
They're
years.
super cool.
That that's insane. I didn't even know what a Greenland shark was prior to
They also
this.
they're the ones that the adults are mostly blind because of a parasite that lives in their eye.
Yes, somebody asked about that in chat as
Yeah,
well. What's the parasite?
I am not sure. It's a copepod of some kind.
Okay.
I actually have a pin here that a colleague. I don't know if you can read that. You're the
Yeah.
copepod of my eye.
Oh,
The Greenland shark.
I do see it. Oh
Uh,
wait, I can see that in this picture here. Guys, here's that.
yeah, pretty weird stuff. Greenland sharks are
Interesting.
bizarre. A lot of the deeper sea animals are pretty weird. There's a whole group called lantern sharks. They glow in the dark. There are the megamouth shark has glow in the dark gums. So we think that's used to attract prey because they haven't seen light before. So they go check it out and they swim into the shark's mouth.
Oh
The
my.
megamouth shark has the coolest scientific name in the ocean, in my professional opinion, Megachasma pelagios, which means giant mouth of the deep.
Ooh,
That's pretty
wow.
badass.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. These are crazy. Wait, this is a. I think I'm looking at a basking shark right now. What
Yeah, those
is?
are cool too.
Oh yeah, yeah. These ones are crazy. What do basking sharks eat?
Plankton, they're filter
Okay.
feeders like whale sharks, but they
Oh
live
my
in
gosh.
typically in colder waters.
They look like a Halloween decoration.
Yeah.
Wow. This is something that we always ask on here, and some people can give answers and some people can't, but do you have a favorite species of shark?
Oh, sandbar shark. Yeah. Hashtag
Oh,
best shark.
okay.
Love them.
Yes. Okay, that's
But
right. Go ahead.
all sharks are beautiful in their own way. But I love my sandbar sharks.
Okay, here's what he's talking about here. Yeah, this is what I think of when I think of shark, for sure.
Yeah, they're pretty typical sharky shark shape. They don't have weird colors or stripes or head shape or anything. Just the classic design. Classics never go out of style.
Interesting. Um, Bo Higa tipped $3 and said, "Fun fact about baby sharks?" Question mark.
So I was interviewed about the scientific accuracy of the baby shark dance last year. That was one of my favorite media interviews that I've done. So if anyone doesn't have toddlers, look up baby shark on YouTube later. And I apologize in advance
I
if we stuck
think
in your
most of
head
them.
forever.
I think they do know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. There's a lot of doo doos in chat
yeah,
right
but
now.
there's a dance that you do with the baby shark, and then the mouths get bigger progressively. So it turns out that the one with the biggest mouth size would be grandma shark,
Uh huh.
not daddy shark, because sharks grow constantly their whole lives, and
Uh huh.
female sharks tend to be larger than males. So mommy shark would be bigger than daddy shark in
Okay.
her mouth size, and grandma shark would be bigger than anyone else.
Um.
But that song, while this is an important soapbox thing for me. That song's not new. That song's over 100 years old. The
What?
new techno version of it with Pink Fong is new, but I sang that song at summer camp when I was a kid. Uh,
Weird. I didn't
so
know that.
it's newly popular, but it's not a new song.
Huh. That is a fun fact. Thank you. Anonymous tipped $11. This was
Hey,
4 minutes ago. I hope you're still here. Said hello from Estonia. It's 4, but we stay up to watch this as a family. Can you ask about
that's awesome.
megalodons? My son loves megalodons.
Yeah. So this megalodon is, if you've been at an aquarium or a science museum and there's those giant shark jaws you can stand in and get your picture taken, that's
Yes.
megalodon.
Uh huh.
It was also a Jason Statham movie last year, The
Mm
Meg.
hmm. Mm hmm.
They are. There is a conspiracy theory on the internet that they are not extinct and they're just hiding.
I did. I
They're
watched.
definitely,
I
yeah,
watched that movie. Yeah.
yeah, they are definitely extinct. Uh,
Okay.
they did exist. They were real. They're super cool. Um, but if there was a 60-foot long shark that bit whales in half that lived in shallow coastal waters near what's now the eastern coast of the U.S., there'd be some evidence that they were still alive, and there is not any.
Okay.
They are an amazing, or they were an amazing species. They're the teeth that can be like 6 inches long. I actually 3D print copies of megalodon teeth and give out to schools
Oh, that's
when
neat.
I speak. Uh, but yeah, they are definitely extinct. But they were really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
I just.
that Meg movie is based on a series of books. There's a character based on me in the fourth one. I don't know if the movie franchise will get that far, and if it does, if they'll cast someone in the role of marine biologist David Shiffman. But I am in that book series.
No way! That's so cool. You really are famous. Wow. That's crazy. I just pulled up a
My wife,
picture.
yeah, my wife introduced me at the wedding to her family members who hadn't met me yet, as David is really, really famous in a tiny part of the world that most people don't know about or care about. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can live with that description.
That no, that's fair. I think that's like it's
I was recognized on the metro the other day. That was neat.
no
On the DC
way.
subway. Excuse me, are you David, the shark guy from Twitter? That was cool.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that. It was someone just said that's like Twitch. Yeah, it kind of is like Twitch. There's like a niche where yeah, we're famous in a very small sector of the internet. I
I
just
love
pulled up
that.
a picture of a megalodon and compared to a great white, and it reminded me that someone in chat earlier asked why great whites don't do well in captivity.
Yeah, we don't know. That's a good question. There are some species that do just fine in captivity. Sandbar sharks can live a long, happy life in captivity,
Mm-hmm.
but some great whites, for whatever reason, don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because they're big. Whale sharks have done fine for a long time in captivity in a few places. They're
Mm-hmm.
bigger than great whites. It's not that they're highly migratory. Other species that are highly migratory have done fine. So we don't know. But
Interesting.
for whatever reason, they don't tend to do great. But the most recent one that was in captivity that I know of, there's probably been other places that have tried it since, but the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is one of the best aquariums in the world,
Yes.
they had a great white in captivity, and they released it not because it was doing poorly, but because it was starting to make the divers uncomfortable
Oh, interesting.
and starting to mess with the other fish in the tank.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, if you've ever been to an aquarium, the kids always ask like, "How do you keep the sharks from eating all the other fish?" And the guides say, "Oh, we just keep them well fed." That's not true. Sharks eat the other fish all the time.
Okay.
But that was my job when I was a volunteer diver at the South Carolina Aquarium. Our first thing that we would do in the morning was pick up the bits of dead fish off the bottom.
Oh.
But the the great white was starting to get aggressive, and that made people uncomfortable. So they released it, and yeah, for whatever reason, they just don't seem to do well. And I don't think it's a technology issue because we get scientists and aquarium operators are getting really, really good at duplicating the conditions of the ocean in captivity. And I don't think it's going to get much better.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's a technology issue.
Huh.
There are certainly some species that 20 years ago we didn't have the technology to keep them safely, and now we do. But I don't think that's it. But I don't know.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking it was like a migratory thing, but I don't know. So Uber tipped $2. Speaking of aquariums, and asked, are small shark slash ray petting pools safe for the fish? Touch
Yeah.
tanks and stuff like that.
So there are those things definitely cause stress for the animals.
Mm-hmm.
But a responsible aquarium will sort of rotate out which animals are getting petted, and will make sure that people are gently two-finger touching them,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that people wash their hands and stuff. That's it's probably not great.
Yeah.
but it's not likely to be a significant problem. But
Hmm.
I've definitely been some places where the staff are not paying attention and people are grabbing the animals and people just shove their hands right in without washing their hands first, and it can be trouble.
Just out of curiosity, as like an upcoming science communicator, and I work at a zoo and I do conservation outreach. Um,
Awesome.
in your opinion, how important is that for people to have that tactile experience, like touch tanks and stuff, even if there is like maybe a negative effect to that animal? Like
Yeah,
what's like the give and take there? How do you think that it's worth it?
I haven't thought much about the give and take of touch tanks particularly.
Uh
I am
huh.
a supporter of science-based, conservation-based zoos and aquaria in general.
Mm-hmm.
They do an amazing job in terms of public outreach, and many do amazing jobs with research and conservation directly. And they're getting so good that animals often do very well in captivity. The touch tank specifically, I haven't thought about as much. They make me uncomfortable,
Okay.
but that's not a science and database response.
Yeah.
And there are times when if I am taking friends to the aquarium that have never gotten to touch a shark before, I will encourage them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
That's fair. Yeah. I think I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you there. Um, Vency tipped $2 and said, "Does he know why goblin shark mouths are shaped and placed the way they are, or if there are other sharks like them?"
Yeah, so goblin sharks. Look up on there's a Giphy GIF of this. If you look up goblin sharks, they can hyperextend their jaws really fast. So it's sort of tucked in and then it goes like that. It's crazy.
Oh,
Um, yeah, isn't that
whoa!
neat?
Here you go, folks. What the
So
heck? That's
So there was a
bizarre.
really cool paper about that a couple years ago about the mechanics of it, but in terms of why, and they just use it for grabbing food that swims in front of their face.
Yeah.
And there are other animals can hyperextend their jaws, but I think they're one of the fastest, if not the fastest. I'm always hesitant for like to say like the biggest, the fastest.
Right.
This
Right. Right.
I might just not know of one, but I think they're among the fastest at doing that, and it looks crazy.
It does look crazy. Wow. Good question. Thank you for bringing that up. I've never seen that before. That's nuts. Oh, ooh, here's another interesting one. Sorry, now I'm like looking at these these
Sure.
chips. That's crazy looking. Oh my gosh. Um, Roby with $5, thank you, and
Thanks.
um, Shark Puncher tipped $5 and asks, "Has anyone ever punched a shark in the aquarium?" We kind of went over that earlier.
Yeah,
Um,
there was a story in Canada last year where a guy got really drunk in Toronto at medieval times and got in a fight with one of the night actors at medieval times. Somehow made his way across town to the aquarium and went skinny dipping in the shark tank. Uh,
no.
don't do that.
Oh my gosh.
But punch the shark in the aquarium? Probably not. I hope not. But those sharks certainly had an interesting evening.
Oh my gosh. I can't, like, what possesses someone to do that? I don't understand.
In
Um
that case, alcohol. But
fair. Right. Right. Um I you're the one who did the Twitter summary of, I think it was Shark Week.
yes,
Okay, yes. It was really it was very entertaining to keep up with
yeah.
that with you on Twitter. So what's your problem with shows like Shark Week, not necessarily just Shark Week?
Yeah, so I wrote an article about this for the Washington Post last year, that for Shark Week's 30th anniversary, and Shark Week has done good. There is no excuse me. It is the largest temporary increase in Americans paying attention to any science or conservation topic
Yes.
of anything,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And that
Mhm.
allows me and other scientists to arrange talks at our local schools and local libraries and museums and stuff like that to talk about real things,
Mhm.
which is great. But Shark Week is a lot of nonsense. There's some good stuff in there,
Okay.
but there's a lot of nonsense. Some of that nonsense is just like wrong and then just frustrating. Some of it is actively harmful towards public perceptions of sharks, and there's a lot of sexist nonsense in there. My field is about 60% women. On this year on Shark Week, there were 28 specials, and I think there were 3 women scientists featured.
Interesting.
Uh, that's at a certain point, that's not an accident anymore because
Yeah.
more than half of the field is women.
Right.
And you would get the impression that every single shark researcher in the world is a white guy, and that's not the case.
Right.
I say as a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
There are also, if they are not as bad as they used to be in terms of this factual inaccuracy. They had a megalodon conspiracy theory show for a couple of years
Okay.
that resulted in the president of the Discovery Channel getting fired for
Really?
the pushback that got. But it was not science. It was not education. It was fiction that they did not say was fiction. They claimed they had evidence that Megalodon was still alive, and
Oh.
scientists in the government know that and are lying to you.
Oh.
And it didn't say this is not real, which is pretty remarkable for an educational channel.
Right. I didn't realize. That does
Yeah, that
sound
was
familiar, like seeing
yeah,
promos or something for that, but I didn't watch
yeah, that
that.
was bad.
That's crazy.
Um, so there are some good shows on Shark Week that focus on science and focus on real facts, but most don't. And most of them at this point aren't egregiously bad. They're just the same nonsense over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that there's maybe a 40% of Shark Week shows this year could be summarized with some person who's not a scientist has a basic question about shark behavior. They didn't ask anyone who knew, and instead they just went swimming with great white sharks in Mexico and filmed themselves doing that and never answered the question.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
just the thing. Like there were 10 of those.
Good to know. Wow,
That's just not,
weird.
and they just say nonsense, like easily fact checkable nonsense that they make no effort to fact check, and that drives me crazy. But they're not, for the most part, are not intentionally making up lies anymore.
Yeah.
But they're also not spreading facts.
Okay.
I use Shark Week as a hook to get people interested in sharks, and I give
Absolutely.
talks and things like that, and many other scientists do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they could do so good if they just did basic fact checking. I'm not even talking about radical restructuring of the program. Just they say something like black tip sharks can get 14 feet long. No, they can't.
Yeah.
Like that's
Just
not
not
an
true.
argument. That's just not true.
Okay.
Like you made that up. And many of these things, it's because there's a lot of inaccurate information on the internet about this stuff. But in many cases, they just didn't look and they just guessed and they
Mm-hmm.
made it up. And it's lazy.
Okay. No.
As someone who loves the natural world, that it offends me as an educator, because what that's saying is we don't think the real world is interesting enough to get people to care, so we're going to make up stuff. The real world's plenty interesting.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Primal said, "I'm about to head to a Halloween party, legit in a shark onesie costume. Talk about some good
Yes.
timing." Good.
Perfect.
Go teach them about sharks.
Yes.
If you are just popping in, like Primal is, the donations today are going to Shark Advocates International, and they do really important advocating for sharks. 24% of sharks are threatened, and so that's what we've been talking about on this podcast so far. We're at $936.96.
Wow.
Yeah, which
That's
is
amazing.
incredible. Thank you guys so much. Someone tipped $5 and asked about China's shark fin soup epidemic. We talked about that in the beginning,
Yeah.
but if you want to, do you want to do like a quick
Sure.
synopsis
So
of what that means?
this is a widely misunderstood issue in that it's a problem, but it is widely believed by concerned citizens, particularly in the West, to be the only threat facing sharks, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is used. The term shark finning is used wrongly as a synonym for killing any shark for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, shark finning refers to cutting the fins of a shark off at sea and discarding the carcass of the shark at sea.
Oh my gosh.
If the shark's carcass makes it to land, that shark has not been finned by law, by what the word means, even if the fins are later removed and sold. So there was a picture that went viral on social media last year that showed hundreds of dead sharks in a parking lot, and I think somewhere in the UAE, and it went viral with the hashtag Stop Shark Finning. That's not shark finning. Stopping shark finning wouldn't stop that.
Yeah.
So people use the term wrong and misunderstand the concept, and that is about 20% of why I drink, is conversations about that I have on Twitter, because people care, and I love that people care, and people want to help, and I love that people want to help. But then we say, well, actually, that's not really what we think you need to be doing to help, and then they get mad at me.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. It's not the only problem or the biggest problem.
Okay. Chris tipped $20 and said, "What can you explain about how sharks use electroreception?"
Yeah. So they have that electrosense. They have sharks actually have 7 senses. In some textbooks, it'll say 8. But
7.
so in addition to the 5 that we have, most of which work better than ours, they have this lateral line, which most fish have, and that can detect vibrations in the water. If you look at a picture of the side of a shark, you'll see just a thin horizontal line. That's a mechanosensory system. They can detect vibrations. Excuse me. And they also have this electric sense that's an organ called the ampullae of Lorenzini. If you look at a close-up of a shark's marrow or a shark's face, the technical term these days, I believe, is the snoot. If you look at a close-up of a shark's snoot, you will see what almost looks like whiskers, a 5 o'clock shadow with a bunch of little specks. Those are each jelly-filled pores,
Uh-huh.
and the jelly is electrosensitive. So we don't know exactly what that is like, but it's probably something like a tingling sensation when they're over something that they're looking for, which
Oh.
they can detect from the electric field, even if they can't see it or hear it or smell it. So stingray, again, hammerheads do that, looking for stingrays buried under the sand.
So you think that's what kind of what you're talking about when we were talking about
The
migration,
navigation, yeah,
navigation.
it's
Okay.
really neat.
And what was the
Uh,
thing that you just said about the lines? Could you
the
repeat that?
lateral line,
Yes. Yeah.
that's something that's on most fish have that, not just sharks. And other species of animals have this electrosensory system. Actually, platypuses do, which is neat.
They're the
Uh,
weirdest.
they're like, what is that? But yeah, the lateral line is used for detecting vibrations. They can tell a fish is struggling nearby, or a fish or possibly a predator is swimming nearby
Interesting.
from the vibrations.
Wow. That's so cool. I didn't know that they had. Guys, sharks have 7 senses, or could even have
Yeah,
8 senses.
sometimes you see 8. It depends on how you count it. The other one is just like detecting changes in light with seasons. I don't know if I would call that a sense, but I'm not a sensory biologist, so I don't have a strong feeling about it.
Wow.
There are people that get very, very fired up about arguments like that, and I just don't have the energy.
Well, it's very. I mean, it's super super cool. I didn't know about that. Um, Fakey tipped $10. Said thank you for your time, David.
Thank you.
Anonymous tipped $3 and said I may have missed this earlier, but are there any positives of recreational fishing for sharks or any other fishing?
Yeah, so the positives for fishing is it employs people and provides protein to the global marketplace. And it can be run sustainably in a way that doesn't harm the environment. In many cases, it isn't. In terms of recreational fishing, I have no issue with responsible fishing, catch and release, or killing what you eat,
Uh
or
huh.
eating what you kill, rather, if it's not a threatened species. So
Mhm.
blacktip sharks are the most commonly caught species of sharks in recreational fisheries in Florida.
Uh huh.
Their populations are fine. I have no issue with that.
Uh huh.
The problem is targeting the biggest and strongest, so you can get a piece of paper that says you're a great angler of an endangered species. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I'm not anti-fishing. I'm anti-unsustainable fishing. I'm anti-killing something to get a picture with it.
Mhm.
But my grandparents or my grandfather used to take me fishing, and my uncle is a huge fisherman. I have no issue with fishing.
Okay.
And in fact, fishing is how we do our research. People ask me all the time, like about scuba diving for research. I scuba dive. I love scuba diving, but that's for fun. I don't scuba dive for my job.
Yeah.
Uh, Marine biology research is often fishing.
Um, Street Shark tipped $30.
Thanks.
Welsh Nerd tipped $20. Emily Jane tipped $5. Congratulations on partner. Thank you so much, Emily. And then Danny tipped $2.86. And that a couple minutes ago we hit our $1,000
That's
donation goal.
remarkable.
Yeah, so we're at $1,000 and
Thanks, everybody.
a
That's going to
thousand
go a
and
long way.
$27. So what's the last? Street Shark said, "What do you think about the Street Sharks cartoon?" I'm not familiar.
Oh, love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Look up Jossum on Giphy, and there'll be 2 sharks in like jeans slapping each other 5. That's street sharks. I also love the Sharknadoes and things like that. I should mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that Sharknado 2 is thanked in my PhD dissertation because they funded some of my research.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
So
so
I love
cool.
those goofy shark things.
What?
My Yeah,
um,
Three Sharks is great. I watch the Arrowverse shows, and I love that King Shark is a character on Flash. Uh, yeah, I love sharks in pop culture. Follow hashtag Sharks Near Me on Instagram to see lots of examples of that. That's a
well,
hashtag that was actually coined by Sonia Fordham, who we're raising money for here. But I've used it a lot on Instagram. She uses it more on Twitter.
yeah. Cool. So Danny with $2 said, Twitch has a David Shiffman sized hole in it. Please tell me he's gonna start streaming soon. This platform needs him.
We'll see.
That's
I
very
am keeping
nice.
pretty busy these days, but I always enjoy the opportunity to come on existing platforms like this
Yeah.
and reach new audiences.
This one is, well, obviously very special to me. But I think it's cool because there's a younger audience on Twitch that is harder to reach when it comes to conservation. At least in my experience, there's either the like what I've done with outreach is either like little kids,
Right.
like libraries and like elementary schools, or it's adults in conservation.
Yeah.
So I
So my target audience is mostly adults
uh
with the sort of stuff that I do because it's a little more technical. I once did was invited to a career fair in Miami for a kindergarten. And I got up and gave a presentation I'd prepared about what it's like being a marine biologist. And the
huh.
teacher says, "Does anyone have any questions? Remember, we learned yesterday what a question is." And I was
Oh.
like, "Oh my God, this is just not for me." Uh,
That's a
the,
nightmare.
it was adorable. But yeah, the question that we got there was, raise her hand. One time my mom went to the beach and saw a shark. And then this
Yeah.
other kid raises his hand and said, "One time my mom went to the beach and saw two sharks."
Yeah.
I'm like,
I do get a
okay,
lot of that.
yeah, I'm glad that I'm here. So Twitter, the platform that I mostly use for my online outreach, is
Uh-huh.
great for reaching journalists,
Yeah.
and it's great for reaching wonks, people really interested in the nitty gritty of policy,
Yes.
and it's great for reaching environmental advocates, and it's great for reaching policymakers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my target audience. If you're there's a huge younger audience for that's great for things like Twitch or Snapchat that I don't do. My wife actually she's not a scientist at all, but she has a huge following among some of my people on Pinterest because she has a
Ooh.
Pinterest board where she keeps track of possible shark themed gifts ideas for me.
Oh my
And she made it
gosh.
public once, and now that goes viral on Shark Twitter every now and then.
That's so
Uh,
funny.
but yeah,
Weird. Dionysus tipped $1 and said this guy is super informative. Also, why can't
thanks.
sharks get cancer?
Oh, so that's a good that's a good question. They can get cancer, and anything with cells can get cancer. Trees get forms of that. So the idea that sharks don't get cancer is spread by a pseudoscientific book called "Sharks Don't Get Cancer," and the guy also wrote a sequel called "Sharks Still Don't Get Cancer." Both of them are wrong.
Huh.
Sharks absolutely do get cancer. The earliest detected case of sharks getting cancer was in the 1850s, so it's not a new discovery.
Yeah.
And the people who tell you sharks don't get cancer are people trying to exploit the desperate. So they're saying sharks don't get cancer. You tried medical care and it didn't work. Give me money and we'll fix you.
Right.
So it's really sad,
Yeah.
but they absolutely can get cancer.
Okay.
Sharks have some amazing immune system things and healing abilities that are being studied by legitimate scientists. But even if sharks didn't get cancer, eating shark would not cure your cancer any more than me eating LeBron James would make me better at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not how this works. So that's a pseudoscientific industry that's preying upon people that are sad and desperate.
Okay. Interesting.
Let's find a happier question. Can't talk about that one.
Purple Martin Conservation is in chat. By the way, guys, and he asked, do you guys remember how much a Purple Martin weighs? He was the second podcast guest on here.
Awesome.
And then Greekology, what's up? Primal tipped $5. This is I am assuming a joke because it's so long and that's usually how it goes. Said every month my girl tells me it's Shark Week. I turn on the Discovery Channel and I show her that she's wrong and there aren't any sharks on, and then she gets mad at me. Okay, good one.
Yes, that is a Shark Week. If you look at Urban Dictionary, is often used as slang for menstruation.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at an overhead diagram of the brain of a shark, it kind of looks like a uterus, which has
Really
been has been remarked upon. Why that? It's just there's no broader significance to that. But
interesting. Okay, all right. Um, Banana Bria said, "Do sharks sleep?" We went over that earlier. I guess they rest.
some
Um,
species rest. Some really have to keep moving their entire lives, or else they can't breathe.
yeah. um, Stanwich with $5 and said, in the show Friday Night Lights, the dude gets paralyzed and goes and tries to get shark DNA to make him walk again. Is this like at all a real thing?
It is not a real thing. It is frequently a subject of science fiction. It was also one of the Grand Theft Autos. One of the people was injecting himself with bull shark testosterone. Yeah,
Okay.
not a thing.
Not the move. Okay. Interesting. Guys, really, really great questions.
Yeah, very thoughtful and interesting stuff here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sniffling so much.
No, you're fine. I'm getting over a cold as well. Um he knows GTA. Yes.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
love the video games.
Oh, cool. There you go.
Yeah, right now my wife and I are playing like the most current video game we've ever played, and that's the new Spider-Man. We're loving.
Cool. That fun. That's so cute. Um, Someone asked, how do they not get tired if, like, the sharks that have to continue swimming, how do they not get tired if they constantly have to move?
I mean, we're sort of wired for that, that we exert ourselves and then rest and recover, and they're just not.
Yeah, there's not like that. Okay, cool.
It's hard to it's hard to understand how another animal perceives the world, but not like we do, almost certainly.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we
Just
wrap up
in
here?
general, that if people want to learn more, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Why Sharks Matter. I'm always happy to answer any questions that anyone has about sharks.
Here's his Twitter. Oh, Citrus and I both linked his Twitter.
Awesome.
so
And
so there's his Twitter.
if you work for a school or if you have kids, I speak in schools all the time. If it's public schools, I don't charge anything. So reach out to me through social media, and happy to arrange things like that.
Awesome.
Or if you have a community lecture series or things like that.
Very cool. Our Cannon just tipped $50 and Horsey tipped
Everybody.
$3. Said had to tune in late, but gotta support Sharkies. Appreciate that a lot. Yeah, so Twitter was linked in chat. His Instagram's linked in chat there as well. His Twitter is a good time, guys. You should follow him. And we're at $1,117.03 today for Shark Advocates International, which is so cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you guys so much, those of you who donated. This was a really, really, really cool podcast. We learned a lot today. Yeah, a lot of people are saying best episode yet. This was really, really
that's
good.
Nice to hear.
Yeah,
tell Steen that.
Okay.
He was there was an article written about him a few years ago that entitled "He was the best biologist on Twitter."
Yes, a Slate magazine.
That only stung for a minute.
Oh, I forgot about that. I didn't think about that. I introduced him last week as I was like, he's the best biologist on Twitter.
Yeah, that Slate called him that at the time that I was a columnist for Slate, so that was awesome.
No way.
No, but he does really great work.
He does.
We know each other and work together on some stuff.
Purple Martin Conservation asked, that's why he said ahem, because Purple Martin was on the podcast as well. You were wonderful too. He also asked in chat what the most accurate shark movie is.
Ooh, I actually have been trying to shop around a column for a while for something like Mary Sue or Gizmodo or something that looking at these ridiculous shark B movies like Seven-Headed Shark Attack. Yes, that's real. Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus or things like that, and finding in each of those movies one fact that is true. And most of them have that because there's someone who works on the movie who wanted to be a marine biologist when they were a kid, and when they were 8 they had all these books about sharks and they remember these things, and they just throw in, like, in the midst of this 7-headed shark eating a family, they just throw in this like random real fact about sharks. there's not a lot of movies that I would call overwhelmingly accurate, though.
Mm-hmm.
But there's little nuggets like that in real ones.
That's kind
They're
of,
in a
I
lot of
guess that's
movies.
good. One more question that we got in here is, do you have a favorite, or do you have favorite memories from doing field research? Or
Ooh,
a
there's
favorite
a
memory?
lot of fun
I
stuff.
bet.
I just like um, getting to. What I love about field research is just being up close and personal with the animals. You get to really experience their power and get a sense of how they live their lives. It's one thing. Like a lot of my day to day life is playing around with data sets in Excel that I plug into the R statistical software. And that stuff's important. That's how we learn patterns from the data. But that's not as exciting as being out and catching a shark and drawing blood from the shark and putting a tracker on the shark.
Right.
Uh, but lots of great memories. And if anyone wants to join me in the field for tagging sharks, I have a class that I'm teaching with Field School, which is get out into the field or getintothefield.com in the spring. That will
Whoa.
include shark research components as well as coral reef restoration and learning about mangroves and also how to communicate all this to the public.
Here's that website, guys. Um, wow, that's so cool. That's an awesome opportunity, huh? Okay. Well, thank you so much for all of that
Thank you. This was a lot of
information.
fun. And thanks everyone for your donations. That's incredible.
Yeah, the donations are insane today, you guys. Thank you so, so much. Let me pull up one thing here. We have a card for you.
Oh, fun.
I will send it to you. I don't know if you have the stream open.
I don't, just to
Okay.
make sure that the Wi-Fi doesn't get overloaded
Oh,
here.
all right. Here's your card. I sent it to you
Oh,
on
wow.
Discord. Hang on, I'll pull it up, guys.
Oh,
Citrus,
thanks.
as always, thank you for this wonderful card. It says, "Thank you, David, for everything you do." So it's signed. It's signed by some of the frequent viewers, some of the donators. Um, Thank you guys
Thanks a
for
lot.
being here. This is awesome. Citrus, thank you for making the card. It's very, very
That's
nice.
great. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, okay, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome, you guys. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you for donating. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And David,
Yeah,
it was so
thanks
nice,
everybody.
so nice to meet you. Thank you so
You
much.
too.
This was awesome. I'm honored that this was your first time on Twitch.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was good. This is awesome. A lot of people think you should stream. So if you ever,
We'll see.
if you
We'll
ever
see.
have a extra time, which I'm sure you don't, that's something to think about. All right.
Well, great. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Bye.